How to Steal a Dog, Chapter 13. I don't know what made me do it, I just couldn't stop myself. I watched Toby walk down the hall and into his classroom, and then turned and went right back out the front door. I hurried up the sidewalk and ducked around the side of the school building. When the buses pulled away from the curb and all the kids had gone inside, I started running. I didn't stop till I was way up toward the highway. My backpack bounced against me as I hurried along the side of the road. I had to see Willie. I just had to. I turned down the gravel road that led to the old house. I kept my mind on what I had to do, see Willie, instead of what I had just done, hightailed it out of school. When I got to the house, I took my backpack off and tossed it on the front porch. Then I pushed through the prickers bush towards the back of the house, just as I reached the corner. I heard something that made me stop in my tracks. Singing. Somebody was in the back of the house singing. I jumped into the bushes and ducked down, my heart pounding like nobody's business. The singing stopped. I held my breath. A man's voice called out, "Are you scared of me, or should I be scared of you?" I knelt in the damp earth and squeezed my eyes shut. My thoughts were jumping around between being scared and trying to figure out what to do. Maybe I could crawl through the thick brush into the back road. I pushed a branch aside and flinched when the sound of rustling leaves broke the silence. Willie let out a bark. "I ain't scared of a coward who won't even show his face," the man called out toward the bushes. I lifted my head the tiniest little bit to peer through the leaves. A man was sitting on a log beside the back porch. I ducked down. I tried to crawl away from the house towards the path of the road, but a tangle of wild blackberry bushes blocked the way. "This your dog?" the man called out. I scrambled to think what to do. Should I jump up and run? Should I call something? "Me and this dog are just sitting here sharing sardines," the man said. "You want some?" I pushed some branches down and peered out. Sure enough, there was Willie, sitting at the bottom step of the porch, licking a paper plate. The man stood up and walked a few steps in my direction. I ducked back down. "I reckon you and me must be alike," he called toward the bushes. "Never drop your gun to hug a grizzly bear, I always say." I crawled a few feet along the ground, trying to get a better view of the man. "But you don't have to worry, 'cause I ain't no grizzly." "You think this little old dog here would eat sardines with a grizzly?" Then, for the second time that day, I just up and did something without thinking. I stood up and pulled the branches aside. "His name is Willie." The man looked in my direction. "Well now, I do declare," he said. "I'm glad you ain't a grizzly neither." I stepped out of the bushes, and Willie started wagging his tail and kind of prancing with his front legs. The man chuckled. "Now that's some kind of tail wagging if I ever saw it," he said. Part of me saying, "Georgina, stop what you're doing and get on out of here." But I was never good at listening to my own self. So I just stood there and checked things out. The man had nailed one end of the blue tarp to the side of the house and the other to the tree to make a shelter. A ratty sleeping bag was stretched out on the ground beneath it. Leaning against the porch, a rusty old bicycle and a wooden crate strapped on the back. An American flag dangled from the end of the long, skinny pole duct taped to the crate. The man gestured toward the bike. "Easy to the park and don't need gas," he said. He grinned, and I caught a glimpse of the shiny gold tooth right in front. When he gave Willie a pat on the head, I noticed he had 2 fingers missing. I'd never seen anybody with 2 fingers missing before. He must have been staring at his hand, because he said, "Got in a tussle with the tractor engine one time." He wiggled 3 of his fingers at me. "Tractor 1, he said. I blushed and looked away. "My name's Mookie," he said, tipping his greasy baseball hat. "Mookie?" He grinned again. "Real name's Malcolm Green, but Mama called me Mookie when I was just a little thing, and I've been Mookie ever since." "Oh, you got a name?" "Georgina," I said. "Georgina Hayes." He stuck out that 3-fingered hand for me to shake. I confess, I didn't feel too good about shaking a 3-fingered hand, but I did it anyway. "I don't mean to go prying into your business, Miss Georgina," Mookie said, "but how come you got your little dog all holed up in this old house?" Uh-oh. That's a question I was thinking, and I had to think fast. Because we had a new landlord, and he says we can't have a dog anymore, so my mom is looking for a new place where we can keep a dog, so I'm keeping him here till she finds one, I said. "There, that sounded pretty good." Mookie's bushy eyebrows shot up. That's so, he said. Yes, sir. Well, I can tell you that the dog was hungry enough to eat the end of the south end of the northbound skunk. I looked at Willie. He sat on the step and pawed the air with one of his little paws. Then he yawned, curling up his pink little tongue. I sat beside him and pulled up on my lap. I bring him stuff to eat every day, I said. That's so. Something about the way he said that's so made me squirm. Except today, I said. Today I forgot. Well then, it's a good thing. I had them sardines. Mookie gathered up a paper plate and empty cans and put them in the grocery bag. Then he turned to me and said, Ain't it? I felt squirmy again. Yes, sir. Seems kind of a shame to keep a little dog like that tied up all the time. I looked down at Willie and ran my hand along his back. You want to run a little bit, fella? I said. He shot up off my lap and whined. Mookie chuckled. I think that's a yes, he said. I untied the string leash from the back porch, and Willie leaped off the steps, jumping onto me, yipping like crazy. I took him around to the gravel road, and off we went. Willie looked like he was ready to bust wide open with pure joy of running. We raced up and down the road a few times till we finally collapsed right there in the dirt, gasping for breath. Willie sat beside me, panting. I don't know which he needed more, Mookie said, them sardines or that run. I pulled Willie onto my lap and put my arm around him. He licked my face and then nudged me with his nose. Mookie strolled out to where the road where me and Willie were sitting. He sure is a smart little fella, he said. You had him long? Kind of. Guess it's pretty easy to love that dog. Mookie picked up a piece of gravel and hurled it into the trees. A loud thwack echoed through the woods. I bet you miss him a lot, he said. I mean, you know, not having him in the apartment of yours. I nodded, stroking Willie's head and trying to keep my face from looking as squirmy as my insides were feeling. Mookie hurled another rock into the woods. I had me a dog when I was a boy, he said. What kind? Oh, just a little old half-breed, he said. Uglier than homemade soup, that dog was. And dumb? My daddy used to say he didn't have both oars in the water. He chuckled. But Lord, me and him were closer than white on rice. He shook his head. I did love that dog. He reached down and scratched the top of Willie's head. Willie gave Mookie one of those doggy smiles of his. Dogs are just like family, ain't they? Mookie said. I looked at Willie, and no matter how hard I tried not to, I kept seeing Camilla's face. Sad face, and hearing Carmela's broken-hearted voice. I stood up and brushed the dirt off my jeans. Where do you live? I said. Yesterday, today, or next Thursday, Mookie grinned, making his gold tooth glitter in the sunlight. Well, yesterday, he said. Over there. And he jerked his head and kind of rolled his eyes. Over where? Over there, he was, in a house. A house, he said real loud, like I was crazy to ask that. Nah, that's where. He opened his arms wide. Out there, outside. Outside? Mookie nodded. Yep. How come? 'Cause I don't have to paint the air or tar paper the sky or mop the ground. All I gotta do is breathe. That's stupid, I said. Mookie chuckled. I better go, I said, leading Willie up the path to the back of the house. Mookie followed along behind us, whistling. I took Willie up to the back porch and tied his leash to the doorknob. How long are you going to stay here? I said. Not long, he said. I leave my feet in one place too long, they start growing roots. Oh. I gave Willie one little pat on the head, and then bye. I made my way down the rickety steps. And thanks for the sardines. For Willie, I mean. Mookie tipped his hat. My pleasure. As I pushed through the bushes toward the front of the house, I had an uneasy feeling. My worries seemed to be piling up, one on top of the other, like bricks on a wall. I waited in the car until it was time to go back to school and get Toby. After all, I tried to concentrate on what I had to do the next day. I went over to How to Steal My Dog notes in my mind and thought about how good I had done so far. I had done good, hadn't I? I mean, I found a perfect dog, I stolen him, I put him in a good place where he's safe. Now all I have to do is wait for Carmela to get the reward money. I bet by the time me and Toby get to Carmela, she'd have the money, and then we could just move to the last step in my dog stealing plan. Shoot, I bet me and Toby and Mama will be in our new apartment just about any day now.